Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a review of Azul Summer Pavilion. This one's from Michael Kiesling and Next Move Games. It is the third in the line of Azul games, and we have some things to share with you about it.
Yeah, and before you go away, if you're sick of Azul, don't go away yet, because this is a very interesting game. It's mostly similar to the original games because you're doing the drafting, you're acquiring the tiles in the same way as you did with the first two games. However, the way you score is vastly different than the original two.
Yeah, they've definitely added some things, and we'll get into those things as we describe the game and into our review. But first, this isn't a prototype. This is a finished game that we brought back from Essen, and the components, like we said, are going to look somewhat familiar. You've got these factories, right, is what they're called, but the tiles are a little bit different. They're sort of little diamond-shaped tiles, and they're going to come in various colors, and of course you've got the first player marker in the middle again. The boards here are what's going to be really, really different.
Yeah, so each player is going to have a player board in front of them. We have a 3-player game set up, so you're going to put your board right there in front of you. Your player color is denoted by this little circle in one of the empty areas on your player board. That's also going to denote your scoring marker. The boards are made up of 6 different colored stars with a 7th star in the center. Each of these are going to have numbers on them 1 through 6. So each star is made up of 6 different segments. And each of them have to have the right color tile placed on those particular locations, with the 7th star in the center being wild. However, you can only have one of each of the different colored ones in that area. So this is going to have to be a multicolored star by the end of the game.
Yeah, and Jeremy mentioned wild, and that's not the only thing that is wild in the game. Each round, you're actually going to have a wild color. So this is going to be something that really changes things up, because every single round you're going to go from purple, green, all the way through to red. All of the colors are going to take a turn, if you will, being the wild for that round. And that's going to come into play when you draft them and when you place them.
There's going to be another board that's set off to the side. This is going to be the scoring board, plus it's going to have a star of its own in the center. This is a board that is communal, that players are going to be pulling bonus tiles off when they're able to acquire them from some of the things that you do on your own personal board. All right, so the game is very simple. You're going to set up an X number of factories. According to the rules, we have 3 players set up, so we have 7 factories. Just like the previous 2 Azuls, you're going to have 4 tiles randomly drawn from the bag on each one of these different locations, with the first player marker placed in the center. The game takes place in 3 phases, and the very first phase is just like the other Azuls. You are going to draft different tiles by doing this. You're going to pick a color, and you're going to throw the rest of the colors in there, and you're going to acquire them to your board. Now, there are wild tiles that you also have to consider.
Yeah, so for example, in the first round, the wild is purple. So if I take from one of the factories that has a purple, you necessarily have to take one wild tile with your selection. So if I took these yellow, I'm also going to take this purple, and this orange would go into the center.
If there are more than one wild tile in an area, you can only take one, but you must take that tile. Now, the other main difference between the original Azul and the second one is that when you take from the center of the board, again, you're going to take one color or one color plus one wild. However, the number of tiles that you pull, you're going to remove that many victory points off the scoring track, but you're also going to take that first player marker, and that first player marker is going to be in effect during the second phase of the game.
Yeah, those negative points work a little bit differently. There's not as much tension with playing your tiles in this game, but there is definitely some negative points there, and there is some things about tile storage that's going to come into play with negative points as well.
And you're going to continue drafting tiles until all of the different tiles are gone. Then you're going to go into the placement phase. This is when each of the players in turn order, starting with that player that took that first player marker, is going to use as many tiles as he wishes onto his board. Now, this is where the tiles you've collected is extremely important on how you use them. As I said, each of these different locations is going to be colored according to the tiles. When you need to place a tile, let's say for instance I wish to place this yellow tile, the number of tiles that you need to use is equal to the number that is on that particular area. So if I place this on the number 3, I have to get rid of a total of 2 more tiles of that color or wild tiles. So I could get rid of 2 purples, which are wild during this round, or a combination of any such. And when you do that, you place them into this tower. Now, the important thing is, right when you do that, you're going to score for that particular tile that you place. If it is a singular one in that area, it's just 1 point. But as you start to build, each individual one that you add to that is going to be the points in that contiguous area that you've built. So the second one would be 2 points. However, if I built this yellow one over here, it's still just 1 point because it's not touching any other yellows.
Yeah, and it's important to note too, while each of those stars has 1 through 6, you don't have to start on the 1. Of course, the 1's going to take just 1 tile, and remember that 6 tile is going to take 1 tile plus another 5 that you have to discard.
Now, before I let David explain the bonuses that you acquire, let me talk about the multicolored star. Again, when you place in the multicolored star, they all have to be different colors. So your star at the end of the game has to have 1 from each of the different tiles. Now, surrounding these different bonus locations is what's going to make this game very different than the first 2 games.
Yeah, so this game has a lot of bonuses going on, a lot of combos going on. It's as though they went to Michael Kiesling and said, hey, we want Azul, but we want that satisfaction of triggering bonuses and combos. So there's some spaces on your board here that you're going to be able to effectively surround with tiles throughout the game as you play them. These spaces right here, these here, and then the ones on the far outside are all going to trigger your ability to go to this main board and take some of these tiles. Now, all of this is going to happen while you're placing tiles. So, say in round 2 or 3, you happen to surround this statue right here with 2 red and 2 orange. You're going to immediately, when that happens, go over here and take 2 tiles from here, adding them to your current pool that you can then still use to place more tiles. If you can figure this out, it's going to trigger a lot of opportunities here because you can always keep an eye on what's available on this board and potentially draft the exact right tiles you need to come over here, trigger more, get something, trigger another combo potentially, all making for some really satisfying turns.
And you're going to go around the table with each player playing as many tiles as they wish during that turn. Now, here's the other difference. You're only allowed to keep 4 tiles from round to round. You're going to place those tiles on the outside corners of your area. Any tiles that you have left over are going to be thrown likewise into the tower, but each one of those tiles is worth -1 victory points, which you're going to mark right there on the scoring board. And finally, for the third phase, the first player is going to place that marker back in the center. You're going to refill all of the factories with 4 tiles, and you're going to move to the next round, which means you're going to have a different wild for that particular round. And after the 6th round, you're going to add up all your points in addition to some of the bonuses you can score at the end of the game.
Yeah, the end of game scoring is really interesting, and it's right here on this board. As you can see, if you've happened to have finished any of those complete stars on your board, you're going to score some points. If you finish that center star, which potentially may be one of the easier ones, you're going to get 12 points all the way down to the purple one, which is going to be 20 points. And then finally, you're going to get points if you've filled stars up to a certain level or at least covered a certain space of every star on the board. The 1s, the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s on these stars, you're going to be able to collect some points that way as well.
And that is Azul Summer Pavilion. Let's talk about the review. You know what? First thing I should note is that I don't own either one of the 2 Azuls. And in fact, I purchased this game with my own Euro, which I don't have Euros typically, but I went out and bought this game because I'd heard from some people at the show that it was a fun game and it was equal to the original Azul, which we both really like.
Yeah.
And after playing it, I have to say, when we first played it for the first 10 minutes, we were like, this is almost too simple. But once we got into it, the ability to build not really an engine, but the puzzle element that turns into combos made this game super interesting.
Yeah, I can't underscore that enough. Combos, combos, combos. That is the major thing that this game adds, and it is one of the more satisfying aspects of any Azul game that I've played. I love the original Azul. Not as hot on the second Azul Sintra because I thought it was maybe tried to be a little more gamery, but really wasn't quite, and I think just overcomplicated an elegant design. This goes back to basics in many degrees, and then also adding that combos things just makes for some turns where you're able to do this, then this, then this, and there's not a player I've met who doesn't enjoy that.
And it's super fun to look ahead. Like as you start to acquire tiles, you're not only acquiring tiles in this game for this round, but you're also looking 1 round in advance because you want to acquire tiles that could be wilds in the next round. Because as you fill up this board, you're constantly thinking, maybe I want to leave a couple spots open because in the next round, the tiles that I acquired can then fill up those bonus areas, maybe 2, maybe 3, which are going to get me more tiles, which are going to make more combos. So there's a lot more thinking that happens during the drafting than I feel in the original 2 games.
Yeah, for sure. The thinkiness is here. What I think they tried to do in the second game was complicated a little bit more. They didn't make it thinkier. This one is definitely thinkier. You're allowed to do that when it comes to those wild tiles, but also, like Jeremy just said, you're not only looking forward to those, but you're looking forward just to finish off some of these stars, because you need 6 of a color to finish off these stars. And if you've ever played Azul, you know you can't count on getting 6 of one color in one round. So it might behoove you to put maybe 3 reds and have them in storage so that when you want to finish off that red and get those points at the end of the game, you can.
I also feel like the strategy in this game is a lot more open-ended. As you build out your board, you're basically free to build wherever you so wish at any given time, depending upon the tiles that you have. However, the way that you build may be important to the points that you score. For instance, you may have 6 red tiles and you just want to build a 6 here because you may not get 6 again at any given time. However, you could just build a 1 and 2 and get more points because you're placing 1 tile, which gives you a point. Then you place that second tile, which gives you 2 points. So you're gaining more points by placing less of those tiles. So there's strategy in that. There's also the strategy in what ones you're covering, because those in-game bonuses are not only important for the stars, but you want to cover all the 1s, you want to cover all the 2s, you want to cover all the 3s. So you're thinking about that constantly through the game as well.
Yeah, there's lots of points to consider. There's also, like we said earlier, those combos to consider. You might be able to just look at some of these spaces and think, okay, well, orange, I'm not going to go heavy on orange, but I'll get the 2 and the 3 at least, so that I can get this combo and get an extra tile. It's all about balancing that, because you can't just focus only on the combos, because you won't get the points at the end, and vice versa.
The con for me, and probably the only con for me, is that the first Azul was really punishing. And I enjoy that part of it, where I am basically forcing people to take tiles that you don't need, and then making them get negative points because I'm looking at their board. I feel like this game is far less punishing because definitely in the beginning of the game, you can typically always use the tiles that you have. As the game progresses, of course, and you start filling up your lower numbers, you could be stuck not being able to place those tiles, meaning you gain negative points. But there isn't an inherent way that you're always going to possibly get negative points every round. It just gets gradually harder and harder to place them.
Yeah, I would agree. The only place you're going to get negative points in a significant way is if you're that person who takes from the middle the first time, and there's a lot of tiles that you're taking. So it's kind of punishing that person who's sitting there waiting for those 6 red to pile up in the center and taking them, because they're going to take negative points. But the tension involved in the original Azul just isn't there, because in the original Azul, you did not want to be the last person taking tiles out of the middle, because you were almost very likely going to be stuck with 5 of a color, 3 of which you might not be able to play, and you're going to take 3 negative points.
Yeah.
So that tension's not there. But like we said, I think that's replaced with that sort of excitement and ability to go after these combos. This is probably slightly more in the vein of a multiplayer solitaire game in that respect, other than the drafting that's going on.
And it doesn't make it a worse game, it just makes it a very different game. I would personally rate this as equal to or better than the original Azul. And it's the only one I own, and I'll probably keep this one.
You know how much I love Azul too. I would agree with that, just because I'm a sucker for combos. And most of the people I play with love doing that. In fact, like I said earlier, I don't know anyone who doesn't like doing one thing that triggers another, that triggers another. So, and this game has that in spades.
So that is Azul Summer Pavilion. It is a 2 to 4 player game that plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.